Welcome to Space Vidcast 238. Did you hear that?
Music's still going.
Yes.
Yay.
That's what happens when I complain in a show. Stuff gets done. That's right. So thank you, Steve Green, for making that actually work. I like that. Unfortunately, that happens for the very last show of the year. That's like my Christmas present.
Right.
Yep.
That's all you're getting, by the way.
Space Vidcast 238 is the last show of 2009. Thank you so much for joining us live. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is beautiful, lovely, wonderful, talented, and wearing a Space Vidcast shirt. See that right there? Carrie Ann Higginbotham. And we've got an action-packed episode for you tonight. We have got Douglas, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Mallette? Give me a yes. Yes? Mallette. Great. Whew.
He's like, no, but we're just going to say yes for you.
Well, we've got a giant screen where we can actually see what he's doing.
I know, but what happens if it's no?
And then I'd be like, eh.
That's what we're calling you today, Doug.
He's the author of Turning Point, which is available on Amazon.com. Actually, we've got a nifty graphic of that in the end of the timeline sequence. You can get that at Amazon.com. This is not, we normally bring on a lot of Apogee book people. He's actually not an Apogee guy, but it's a fantastic book, and we'll have him on later. That was a horrible segue.
Actually, for those of you who have been with us for at least a good part of this year, the Twitter workbook where I appeared in, that we also had David Haslam came onto the show, came onto the show, was in-house guest as opposed to on Skype. He started a publishing company, and through somebody on Twitter, I heard that Doug had this book that he wanted to get published, so I hooked the two of them up. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way, but that's how I met Doug, was that through somebody else on Twitter, something.
So did you just promote like a failure on...
He was denied by Apogee too, but it doesn't really matter.
Before we get into space
because
news,
he got the book out, so...
Before we get into space news, I just want to say you were published in the Twitter workbook, right? You are going to be speaking solo at South by Southwest this year, and so if you're a techie, on a Moon 2.0, I will not be speaking, not because I don't want to speak. I was not asked to speak.
Right.
They asked Carrie Ann to speak. And not that she will do, she will do great.
And I helped name Space Up.
I am totally jealous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens when you have a real job and I just do space crap all day. Everyone contacts me because you're like, I don't know, this guy needs some sort of help. And you just email me with it. And I'm like, oh, he needs help like creating a whole brand new kind of conference. Okay, I guess I'll help with that.
No, you know what it is? They're like, oh, that Ben character, he's shady. We don't want him. But Carrie Ann, she's cute. We'll take her. All right, let's get the show started right with a little bit of space news. Space news. That's hard to do.
Yeah, I don't think Adam actually held it for that long.
I did. Wow. And someone forgot to turn swap mode off, didn't he? No? It just went black? That's pretty cool.
Steve, get on that.
Wow. All right. First item. Actually, do we want to do... Let's do the Obama heavy lifter thing. This is breaking Twitter news, as it were. Right before we started the show, we were... what was it, like 5 minutes before the show started, maybe 10 minutes before the show started?
Well, no, 5 minutes before the show was supposed to start.
Whatever. We started seeing a bunch of a Twitter flurry about Obama canceling Ares 1.
Right.
And going with a new heavy lift, and not necessarily a new heavy lifter, a heavy lifter. And it's kind of like,
right.
Okay.
The rumors are saying President Barack Obama will ask Congress next year to fund a new heavy lift launcher to take humans to the moon, asteroids, and to the moons of Mars. And to the moons of Mars, sorry. However, the heavy lifter has not ever been named. It's not like they said, we're dumping Ares 1 to go with Ares 5.
Maybe they just didn't realize that there's more than a heavy lifter out there.
Which is a little concerning, if you ask me.
Well, maybe not.
It's on NASA watch. You'd think that somebody would have figured something out.
Well, no, the Obama administration may not have said.
guess.
Right.
So Obama's like, "Eh, we're gonna dump that little thing and go with that big giant thing," and everyone just said, "Oh, he said heavy lifter."
Right. So it's all rumors at this point. It's hearsay.
Yes.
Kind of. I mean, we don't have any confirmed sources, and we're reading a bunch of news sites, and they're all like, "We've got this exclusive information," and none of them are actually exclusive.
Yeah, everyone says they're exclusive right now. Which
and
is kind of
we don't know if it's Ares 5. We don't know if it's not Shuttle C. We don't know if it's.
Right.
Although I don't know that not Shuttle C is really a heavy lifter. We don't know that it's if it's the one that really ticks me off, Direct, or anything like that. What I do find interesting is that they did. Let's just say, let's play this out for a moment. Say that they do cancel Ares 1, and let's just say that they go with either Ares 5 or something else. How many times are we going to make NASA shift and change directions? Because quite frankly, by the time they get something
done, say Obama doesn't get reelected,
Yeah.
we're not going to get this silly thing done before
it doesn't matter. Let's just say he goes all the way, all 8 years.
Right.
It's still not going to be done.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. So what happens when the next president comes on board? Are we going to force NASA to change direction again and then blame NASA for their lack of ability to deliver anything?
Probably.
I'm just saying.
Isn't
Now,
that what
don't
we
get me
normally
wrong.
do?
Don't get me wrong. I will be critical of NASA and I'll be critical of Constellation when it's due. But right now, it's just like, you know, we had gotten this far. We were actually doing some stuff. Don't make them change direction again. I don't know that that's what's going on, right? So.
Right.
There
But
you
it
go.
could, and so there.
But there is some good-ish news. This is kind of bad timing because it's right before the holiday season. But there's a new unconference being organized called Space Up.
Yes. For those of you who are not familiar with an unconference, or what's kind of like a bar camp, if you will, it's where everyone who's there are no spectators. Everyone is a presenter. Everyone there is expected to participate in some sort of panel or roundtable or just some sort of discussion going on, and in this case, all about space and space travel, particularly human space flight, which I think is very, very cool. Space Up is what they've decided to call it. It will be in San Diego in spring of 2010, which for those of you who are on the other side of the world, spring of 2010.
Because we have a worldwide audience.
We do. Quantum G came in the room and was like, "What? How am I supposed to know what spring is exactly?" You're right. No, you're totally, totally right. So I believe that Chris Radcliffe, who is the organizer of the whole thing, is shooting for April, May-ish, so early second quarter, late first quarter of the year, right in there somewhere. He doesn't want to have to compete with something like South by Southwest, of course, but at the same time, he wants to have a lot of people there. I believe we are a media sponsor.
I have no idea.
I think we are.
But the point, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is we need your help to make this thing go. I actually think it sounds really cool because I'm all about social media, new media, and I like conferences, and I think this is a really awesome idea. It's kind of like South by Southwest meets space.
Right.
But they need to raise $2,000 before January 1st at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And right now, they're as of this exact moment in time, they've got 18 backers at $781. Now, we haven't put our money in yet, but we'll put in at least $100. So when the show's done and post-show, we'll add another $100 to that.
Right.
Now, I actually wanted to be a $500 sponsor, but unfortunately, I couldn't quite pull that one off.
Not
We're going to try, but I won't be able to make it by the January 1 deadline.
Right, exactly.
But if you go to spaceup.org and then go into the register, and then you can click on the pre-register button, you have the ability to, at that point, back the project. And if they reach $2,000 before their deadline, that helps them with this Kickstarter program that helps essentially kickstart the conference.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good cause. I don't know, I can't vouch for what happens to any of the money at that point, but I would love to see this conference happen. And if you want to go and see a space conference, help them out. Anything from like $10, $25, $50, $100, or $500.
And the other really cool thing is that you can donate as little as $1, but if you're pledging $10, you get a patch. If you pledge $25 or more, you get the patch and a T-shirt. If you pledge $50 or more, you get the official, you get the patch, a priority registration, and the T-shirt, plus some other little, silly little things. $100 gets you the priority registration, all the other stuff, of course, but the cooler T-shirt, like all of the organizers are going to be wearing, and the $500 or more gets you 2 priority registrations and all the other stuff. So, there's a little bit of incentive, kind of, you put your money in and you're not just getting registration, you're not just helping something, which is awesome, by the way, but you also get, like a little patch or T-shirt or something kind of cool like that.
Yeah, so that was just one of those things I wanted to bring up and see if we couldn't get a little bit of backing there, because these are good people. We know these people. They're regular space vidcasters, and anything we can do to help them out, and I think it's going to be. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited. I hope it goes, and I hope we get to go, especially since it's in California. It's freaking cold in Minnesota.
Yes, but Quantum actually asked if anyone will be there to stream it. Anything that we try to get our hands on, we will try. Hey, there's Chris now. We will try to get our hands on to stream. We're not really sure what the connectivity is looking like over there.
There are always restrictions when it comes to the conferences and streaming, right? So there's technical restrictions and then political restrictions as well. So we'll stream what we can. We always do whenever we can.
Yep.
That's what that is. All right. Another bit of news that happened like 40 minutes before the show started. I know, this was just like a breaking news night. We're both like,
the whole show like written out, and then it was like, no, cut that because we got to put this in, and cut that because we got to put this in.
Almost everything we had prepped, we're not going to get to. It's all going to be this breaking news stuff. But Lynx, I'm sorry, X-Core. Yeah, nope, Douglas, you're done. Sorry, bye.
I wish you could see Douglas's face. He's like, huh? And now we're getting cool hand signals, but we won't show you that.
So X-Core, who makes rockets primarily, as well as some actual vehicles. They make the Lynx and Lynx Mark II. They have been selected by South Korea to do something. Like they're going to be there. Help me out with the story. I lost it. I'm trying to call it up.
Keep going. Korean plans space tours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. So suborbital. They're going to be doing what Virgin Galactic does, but for South Korea.
Correct.
So that was, and that's not rumor. That's actually official.
Right.
Yep. Pete mentions in the chat room. Yes, it is suborbital. It's not actual.
But they
LEO.
have a deal.
It's not to. It's
that's
not to space
It's
station.
a $30 million project. They're getting money in.
Which is good because I've heard a lot about Lynx, and we've seen the pretty pictures. We've actually, did we show the picture? We've got the there you go. So isn't that neat looking? But that's all CG. So as far as I know right now, and I obviously they don't talk about this a whole lot. It's the Lynx Mark II, isn't it, Quantum G? I think it's technically the Lynx Mark II.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's they've got like models for wind tunnel testing. As far as I know, that's as far as they've gotten.
Right.
So look at how long it's taken Virgin Galactic to roll some of this stuff out. They're not even testing Spaceship Two yet.
Right.
They rolled it out with a bunch of lights and then had all their stuff blow over.
But if they can keep to the timetable that they've already got set up, they can fly as soon as 2012, 2013.
Which is the same. This is where this boggles my mind. It's the same timetable as Virgin Galactic, who's been working on this for quite a bit longer and has deeper pockets.
I know.
So either the Lynx Mark II is way more efficient, or they've got a lot further along than I believe they are, or that I've been led to believe. Led to believe is the wrong term, but further along than I think they are, or they're just not going to make that timeline. That's crazy talk. I think it's option 3. I mean, we've talked about this earlier in the show, earlier in the year. I don't know that they can make that happen. The thing that X-Core has going for them, though, the thing that Virgin Galactic was missing and that X-Core has, they have a working, usable rocket.
Right.
That's what they do.
Right.
Now, that's a hard part, and that's what set Virgin Galactic back. So, for all I know, the actual vehicle part of it, is very easy. And as Space Advocate is saying in the chat room, I see, they have kept themselves very secretive, and they have. I don't know what's behind their closed doors and stuff like that.
No, exactly.
I've lost my timeline.
But we will one day. We will one day. Oh. I'm sorry, that was a little creepy, wasn't it?
You know what? Let's just do we want to do the Phoenix thing, or should we just go to Douglas? I think we're going to go to break. We'll do the other stories as dailies, or you can read about it. Basically, the other stories we're going to skip just so you can kind of look them up. The Phoenix lander, you guys all remember that?
Yeah.
Might be rising from the ashes. They've got a
coming back to life.
Maybe they got a very small amount of time where they might be able to go in and resurrect the Phoenix lander. Remember, the lander's not a rover. It landed on the ground, did its thing. Now they're going to try to bring it back to life, and they're going to try to free the Spirit rover as well. They were able to do some pretty cool science with the rover, but the Spirit rover got one wheel stuck, and then they were trying to dig it out, and I think they got another wheel stuck. And it just almost looks human. It looks like a pet robot. Look at that.
I know.
It's so cute. When we come back, the author of Turning Point and Space Vidcaster, Space Advocate, a.k.a. Douglas Mallette, will be joining us and talking about his awesome book. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to the Crow River Coffee Company in Watertown, Minnesota. Situated on the bank of the beautiful Crow River, we offer espresso drinks, delicious food, live music, bulk beans, and artisan items. You can see us at crowrivercoffee.com. Thanks!
Man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred.
Now here we are, a few remaining shuttle flights left. We are in transition between now and what's next.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
We went from the glory of Apollo to the Space Shuttle Transportation System. We've been here since 1981.
And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space.
It's up to all of us to ensure that this next coming age of space is something we can grow with.
Some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. This country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
What happens next is up to us. Will we compromise? Will we be risk adverse? Will we accept the challenges in ways we haven't thought of before? What legacy will we leave behind for generations to come? As we watch these remaining shuttle flights, let it be a celebration of what's to come, of what could be possible. We must try to forget the politics. Let's look at the facts. Let's think about the incredible feats we've already accomplished, but not for too long. Let's reach beyond that.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people.
This is about technical evolution to inspire future generations. This is about a never-ending quest to find out what's possible and, in turn, find our future.
Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
Extolling the ways investment in NASA makes sense. But I have only this song to convince those who are wrong and think it's a wasteful expense. I will dare to say it's our greatest success. Less than 1% is hardly excess in a budget that keeps us all in debt. At least here we can see what we get. So let's hold a bake sale for NASA. Show our love for a program that actually works. The cookies are sure to be out of this world. We could even have Astros as clerks. Give folks a chance to learn firsthand why we need these adventures in space. How it affects them directly at home and elevates the whole human race. Human race. Humans in space.
That's right. You read it correctly in the calendar. This is the final show for 2009. And it was an awesome year, 38 live episodes, a lot more Space Vidcast shows than that because we have the daily shows as well. But it's been a lot of fun. So we'll wind down the 200 series of shows and spin up with 300 series of shows next year. And as usual, every year I try to do something big and new and interesting. And then we fail at like 2/3 of it, but 1/3 of it sticks. So we'll probably end up doing the same thing. And
so far, I'm still here.
So far. And in the break, you also saw the Bake Sale for NASA song.
Yep.
You can get that on Amazon.com. That's
Yep.
why Craft Blast. Just search for Bake Sale for NASA.
Yep.
And it's the only thing that pops up because what else is going to pop up under Bake Sale for NASA?
Who else has thought of having a Bake Sale for
Exactly.
NASA? I mean, really.
Exactly. And there was one other thing I wanted to point out in there. That's all right. It was. It's been a great year, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Joining us now live via Skype is Douglas Mallette, also known as Space Advocate in our Space Vidcast chat room. Yes, he's a Space Vidcaster, and the author of Turning Point, a book that you can also buy on Amazon.com by going to tinyurl.com/Mallette. Right there, you can see on your screen. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us. We kind of threw in the middle of that break the clip about the future of NASA just for you and for Space Shark and for, what's the organization he's with? The Space... It'll come to me later.
Yep.
Yeah, we threw it in there because you are an advocate for space and for continuing this, and thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I just want to let you know I can't see you guys, so I'm totally flying blind, but that's okay.
All right. Well, this is one of those technological shows where things just don't work quite right.
No.
So you talk a lot in your book about why we should go to space and why we should be in space. So I think we should start there. Why should we be in space? I ask this question of all of our guests, pretty much, and I get different answers across the board. So what do you think? What reason do you think we should be in space for?
Well, I think right now we find ourselves, and as we all know, in this current economy, we've got the economic issues, we have employment issues, we have energy issues. There's a lot of issues on the table that all the politicians and pundits want to constantly talk about, and space solves them all. As far as I'm concerned, instead of trying to find a specific solution for each problem, space ends up knocking out 4 or 5 of these all at once if we just employ some of the proper governmental fixes to let the commercial space industry develop and grow.
Now, in the beginning part of your book, you actually talk about some of where we had thrown our money, for the U.S. government, some of the incentives we'd thrown, $0.7 trillion we had thrown in there, and you talked about what would have happened if we had given that to NASA instead. Can you touch on that for a moment?
Sure. I draw this little story. The Apollo program lasted 13 years. And it cost, in 2008 money, $150 billion to pull off. So if you were to take that $700 billion stimulus and dump it right into NASA and say, you know what we're going to do is we're going to build a moon base, not just flags and footprints, but we're going to go there and do something for the long term. And we're going to get other countries involved to help and whatnot. You'd be able to fully fund 4 full-size Apollo programs. Each one of those programs employed 400,000 people. So 4 times 4, you got about 1.6 million people you could almost directly employ to make that happen. Make it a 3-tier thing. We want to build something on the moon. We want to go to an asteroid and try to look at how we can mine resources and land on it and do that. And do scouting hit my own microphone. Do scouting missions to Mars and kind of make it a 3-tier effect. And just employ a boatload of people to do it, but not all government employees. Work it in a way so that that money is spent, not just one big chunk of $700 billion to NASA, but maybe $100 billion, $200 billion to NASA, which in and of itself would give half the people there a heart attack. But besides that, take the rest of the money and invest it into the commercial space industry by creating incentives for small businesses to start up, to do space-based technology, space-based innovation, give it to colleges and universities so that they can do advanced research and development on their own to facilitate the program. Start making the commercial space industry a stronger, more viable market, because once you set up the infrastructure, much like what the American government did with the Intercontinental Railroad, if you set up the infrastructure, the market will develop itself.
Now, with the infrastructure for the railroad and for our highway system, that made sense, right? I mean, we had to move goods from one area of the country to the other area of the country,
right.
And with that changed how we ate food and how we got different materials from point A to point B radically. I mean,
right.
it is
well,
what started the
see
Industrial
the immediate
Revolution.
benefits, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like there wasn't a whole lot of negotiation that needed to go on. It was sort of like, hey guys, we need stuff over here. Okay, we'll make that go from here to there, no problem.
But one of the arguments I get from my non-space friends is, that all made sense, and obviously in retrospect it made sense. It
right.
makes sense now. But what advantage do we have to opening up space? We use the government to build that infrastructure, and then what? I mean, it's not like it's a road to the other side of the country. It goes,
right.
I mean, space is nothing. There's just, it's a space.
Right. Well, exactly. Space is space, but all you have to do is say, well, that's fine. You talk about resources in the gold rush. We have resources on the asteroids. We have resources on the moon. There are things that one decent-sized asteroid has more iron ore in it than every amount of iron ever mined ever in the history of humanity. So one asteroid can facilitate a majority of our mineral needs for quite a long time. And it's worth a lot of money. And so when you start putting it in those terms of industrialization of space, not tourism is nice and fun, and I want to go too, but it's not about tourism of space. It's about the industrialization of space. Mm-hmm. It's about using space and mining those resources, not only to bring back as needed if necessary, but also to use in space so that we can build spaceships up there, so that we can refine materials up there and escape this whole Earth gravity well fight that we're never going to win until we develop anti-grav systems.
Well, one of the scarce, I mean, you bring up a good point, which is we live on a planet of scarce resources.
Right.
We have got X amount of gold, X amount of platinum, X amount of whatever. Pick a substance. There's a point where we will run out of it. But the one thing that we're running out of faster than anything else, and that we consume faster than anything else, is oil. I don't really know that there's oil in space, so there's an energy need here too, right?
Right.
What does space do to help that side of it?
Well, I subscribe significantly to space-based solar power. I really do think that's a viable option. Now, do we need to develop some additional technologies to make it more plausible? Absolutely. Do we need to drop launch costs in order to make it more reasonable? Absolutely. And I think that's what SpaceX and XCOR and Orbital Sciences and all these other commercial space people are trying to do. I mean, people say it costs so much to go to space. You're absolutely right, and that's because the government's running it. When's the last time you saw the government run anything cheaply? They don't. They don't have a profit motive. They don't have an incentive to be cheaper than they need to be. They have 19,000 levels of checks and balances because they're paranoid, because they're using public money to do what they're doing, and they have an image to uphold. A private company, I won't say would be more risky, because one mistake and they're done. They're cut off. You forget it. But in fact, the whole commercial industry would suffer a major setback. No company wants to be that guy. No company wants to be the one that hoses it for the next 100 years. So they're going to be safe, but they're also going to be profit motivated and practical. They're going to develop systems orders of magnitude cheaper, which means the launch costs are going to end up dropping by orders of magnitude. Then everything becomes a lot more realistic.
But you're saying that, because you talked earlier that there's the pot, you give NASA a bunch of funding, help our economic crisis by, rather than giving stimulus checks back and creating, well, we really didn't create jobs, right? We actually lost,
right.
Jobs have been going down. Rather than do that, give NASA the money and have them create an entire new industry, a space industry that doesn't exist today. I mean, obviously there's space, but...
Yeah, turn the space industry from a what I call a side pet project, which is basically what it is now. It's important, it's big, we love it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But grow it to a point to where it's actually one of our economic pillars, that space exploration and development is a strong cornerstone of our national economy. Because we were relying on invisible money, funny banking, and balloons, and every time those pop, this one being the most recent, it hurts us badly. And we got to get back to the point of making tangible goods and making tangible things so that we can sell them to other nations, so that we can service to other nations, so that we can grow our economy by building and doing things instead of shifting bits of data in computer systems on Wall Street. So once we get to that point, and the space industry is what will facilitate that. And you might employ 800,000 people to do these projects, but these people are making $80,000 a year. They're going to have the kind of disposable income or the kind of incomes where they're now going to want to buy a house, a car, go to the movies, etc., go out to eat. So they're going to have the income to spend. So that's going to help the consumer markets grow and stabilize themselves as well.
Kind of where I was going with some of that is that, later you say, giving the government money, they're not very good at it. And I think the chat room is kind of bringing this around to the point that I wanted to make. Space Cadet mentions change NASA's culture before we give them more money. And then there's also comments saying that NASA shouldn't be creating space industry, but rather using it, not creating it. I'm not sure. I guess it defines on how you define creating space industry.
Right.
But
well, NASA has a role to play, and right now, I wish I could see the chat room as you guys are going, but I don't want to have the webcast up while I'm talking to you. But because I can see their comments, but NASA has a role, but that role is not what they're doing now. I think we can all agree that they're slightly overextended in what they're doing, and there's a lot of things that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't be building rockets to go to Leo. We all know that. Should they do the heavy lift? I think that would be more along their alley, but a heavy lift to get to, of course, we've got Falcon 9 and Falcon 9 Heavy coming up. I don't know how strong that's going to be, but I think NASA has the capabilities to build a monster ship to take massive amounts of supplies and do construction on the moon. That would be something that would be difficult for a private company to absorb and say, well, what's in it for us to do that? That's not something a private company would do. Government would build the fort. If you go back to what governments have done throughout the course of history, explorers would go out, then the military or government would build a fortification there, and then you'd start building the transit way back and forth and setting up the infrastructure and then settlers and villages, and the next thing you know, you've got San Francisco or something to that effect. Well, same idea with space. Let the government build the moon base and then lease it. Make a profit on the dad-blasted thing. Build this moon base that's capable of doing research and having the hotels in it or whatever the case may be. Whatever they set it out, it's got like 5 or 6 platforms that it can host. And then start to rent that out to private companies. Rent out space, rent out time, rent to other countries. Start making money back on it, at least to the point of breaking even. That's something the government can do to help facilitate the private space industry, up to and including building fuel depots so that we don't have to worry about carrying every ounce of fuel with us. Go launch from the Earth, go to a depot that's been already filled with automated refuel drones, if for lack of a better term, then fly to the moon, do what you need to do, refuel at the orbiting station that's around the moon, again, refueled by automated drones, and fly back. You don't have to carry as much fuel now. Your trip is a little more practical.
Taking 2 comments that were in the chat room and kind of merging them. One was from Steven Space and the other was from a Geek Mom saying, well, instead of having NASA kind of build this stuff, what if we just turn them into the FAA of space, the FSA, I guess. Right.
Because I think NASA's really good at the R&D Lewis and Clark crazy stuff. I think that's something that they pride themselves on. Going to the moon was a huge feat of R&D and thinking out of the box and inventing crazy systems and how are we going to pull this off. And I think government money is good for that. Private money, there's no return on trying 9 different R&D methods to solve one problem. The private industry is going to want to streamline that so much that it might not be practical for them to do it. But the government would have the money and the resources to effectively blow, but they're blowing the money on trying to find that one system that does an amazing thing to solve the project or to solve the problem. And then, as we know, when NASA starts inventing crazy, whack, funky technologies to do these trips, to do these projects, they also end up invariantly inventing other technologies that are used in a whole host of other industries, especially like medical. I mean, we could go a whole list of medical technologies that have come from the space program, computer advancements, communication technologies, etc., that most people take for granted and don't understand came from space. A lot of those would have never been invented because the challenge on Earth isn't the same as the challenge of going to space. so you wouldn't think about those solutions, or that if they were to have been invented, it would have taken a lot longer for that to happen. So space accelerates the development.
And this is essentially a new industry that you're talking about as well. I mean, we have a space industry in LEO, but we don't have any lunar mining. We don't have near-Earth asteroid mining. We don't have the ability to go to a Martian moon and look at it and mine it and put humans there, or even create additional colonies. So not only are you creating jobs here on Earth, and by your own accord, you're saying this wouldn't be the size of Apollo. This would be 4x the size of Apollo.
Yeah, very much so. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be, especially if you start bringing in the commercial sector and international partners and start seeing the capital flow between private companies internationally. You've got to fix some rules for that to happen. I mean, ITAR right now is the biggest choke on commercial space that exists. And it takes I don't know what it's going to take. It's going to take probably a complete reshuffling of Congress, and I don't want this to sound too bad, but all the old military type dudes who think that space is a national defense Cold War era location, and change the thinking into, no, space can be a peaceful, commercially available, public use location just like anywhere else.
Could you touch on for a second ITAR, because we have a lot of space geeks that kind of show up and don't know the inner workings of some of the things that are truly restrictive. ITAR being a regulatory system, I guess I could call it, we could call it.
And I deal with ITAR all the time at work.
Yeah, so could you explain a little bit of what ITAR is and why it's such a big deal?
Sure. The International Trade and Arms Regulations, and you can look it up, people can look it up and kind of do some personal research, but in a nutshell, what it is, missiles, bombs, and guns. It's supposed to protect our technological developments in the area of military assets so that other countries don't get it. You don't want to share your missile, bomb, and gun technology with the bad guy or with the potential bad guy, which makes sense. But they have, over time, started to include commercial space assets in the ITAR umbrella, like communication satellites. In 1999, there was a reformation of ITAR to include the commercial satellite industry, and in 2 years, we saw the market share, the American global market share of commercial satellite business drop 50%. No, about 50% in 2 years. It went from 75% market share, we own that market, and it dropped to 25% because private commercial space communications companies in America could no longer work with France, England, Germany, or anybody else in the private sector because of ITAR. And so that's a problem. And we're talking ComSat. We're not talking missiles, bombs, and guns.
Right. So
it's become so restrictive that they think anything that goes into space can be used as a weapon. As far as I'm concerned, a U-Haul truck filled with just the right amount of fertilizer can be used as a weapon. You don't need space technology to be a bastard. So to think that space has to be this holy grail, military control, we don't want commercial industry in it location is restrictive and detrimental to our growth.
It's an important issue. We should actually talk about it. We don't talk about it very much on the show, but anytime we're talking to a new space company or anyone that is based here in the U.S., oh my gosh, it is like the biggest stumbling block that they hit is ITAR, and it's just a pain in the butt because it restricts not only what they can do and who they can work with, but who can work for them, who can actually work on their projects as well. It's a huge issue. And I assume there's some Wikipedia stuff on that. I think we should actually start a section of Space Vidcast dedicated to ITAR so we can educate people on the problem that it truly is.
I mean, I've heard that they're in the process now of discussing ways to reform it. I've heard that they've shifted it over to the FAA, that part of it to go over to the FAA or to the commercial Commerce Department, to the Commerce Department from DOD. I've never seen any of that validated. So I really don't have a clue what Congress or any officials are doing with ITAR other than maybe giving it lip service, but not actually doing anything about it. And it's about time that we, the people, stand up and yell at our politicians and say, look, that's enough. Space is a peaceful place. Anybody can do bad things with bad stuff. Last I checked, Iran, who just launched a test missile, which is supposed to be able to hit Israel, they didn't have access to our space technology to pull that off. but they're doing it anyway. So what are we going to do? Are we going to constantly hamstring ourselves under the paranoid delusion that we're going to keep bad people from doing bad things? Or are we going to continue to police as we should, but freely share peaceful ideas and technologies from company to company as they see fit? Each company is going to be responsible enough to protect its own intellectual property and its own ideas so that another company doesn't steal it. They protect against industrial espionage in every industry that exists. So there's no reason to assume that the space industry is going to be any different. In fact, they might even be more restrictive because the technology is so innovative, so expensive, but also so lucrative.
So I've started to bore the chat room with my ITAR discussion because, you know, it's a non-interesting government thing. You know, they went off for quite a while talking about
Was I snoring? I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
you know, I think it's interesting because it is such a huge stumbling block in the space industry, and I think it's going to prevent space agencies from really starting and working here in the U.S. They're going to go into areas in which, but ITAR isn't just here in the U.S. by the way. ITAR restricts things all over the world. But they were talking about, you know, where NASA should be, and actually let's go back to that for a moment. In an ideal situation, let's go forward 10 years, let's go forward 20 years. Where should NASA be, and what will that have changed as our culture? What will have that changed?
I think the first thing NASA needs to do is dump Ares 1 and let the commercial sector be the taxi. That's a good way for the commercial industry to get its feet wet in doing something major and serious. Then after that, they need to focus on doing the heavy lifter to go to the moon and do what needs to be done to develop the moon, and work with the commercial industry to do it. What NASA becomes really depends on what we do within the next 1 to 2 years. If you're going to say, give me this 10-year window, the 10-year window is highly dependent on the next 2. It's a lot of things would have to happen for NASA to be what I want it to be. So it depends on what happens. As they're going now, I don't know if NASA can do anything. I think, and one of the things you mentioned earlier in the show, is every time NASA gets ready to go, some new administration comes in, pulls the rug out from under them, and they've got to do stuff over again. And then we complain, what's NASA doing? They don't know what they're doing. When in fact, it's more like the administration's constantly changing the boat every 5 minutes. So it's difficult for them to get something solidified. And as we know, going to the moon or anything like that is not going to be an election cycle. As one of my lines, space doesn't revolve around election cycles. These projects are too big and take too long, which is good because you're enabled to stimulate the career path of a person by doing major projects like this. One guy could have his entire career be working on this moon base, and it'll be done in 15, 20 years, or maybe that's half his career if he wants to go a really long time. But after that moon base is done, there's going to be a whole lot more after that that's going to have to be done. Or maybe he or she can work in the space energy and start working on seriously going into space-based solar power testing and putting up 1 megawatt microsats or so and see how that technology would work. How much energy did we lose in transmission, all these other things, figuring out the best frequencies and the best systems to use, developing Uber solar collectors, or use mirrors to focus the light, whatever the ideas are to help make that a possibility. I mean, I love the idea of space-based solar power because it's instantly transmittable anywhere on the planet without power lines. The only thing you have to have is the receiving station at your location, and then you can run lines off of that. But you don't have to have thousands and thousands of miles of relay stations and power lines for space-based solar power to work. All you've got to do is turn the sat, point it at the receiving station out in BFE Africa somewhere, and where they're poor and hungry and they don't have any power, they can't refrigerate their food, they can't do any of these things, and that's why they're poor and distraught and disease-ridden and everything else. You build a satellite station there to receive the energy, you point that satellite there and fire a beam at them for a week and charge some batteries or just power them on a rotating schedule, they're going to be able to have refrigerated areas, they're going to have a working hospital, they're going to be able to bring themselves out of the pit in months. It won't take that long for that to happen. You're talking a year maybe or less for them to go from squalor to stabilized and starting to educate themselves and grow themselves as a better people. You can save millions of lives just by doing that.
All right, one final question for the main show, then we're going to slide you into the post-show and Epic, because this is a fascinating conversation. I'd like to continue it. But you're talking about building an entire new industry, and this is something I think America is quite good at. Industrial revolution, computer revolution, and internet revolution, and next the space revolution. But it feels like we're very resistant to this. I mean, everything you're talking about makes sense to a space advocate like myself. I mean, I listen to what you're saying. You know what? Let's do a big Apollo program. Let's create 1 million+ jobs out there in the market. Let's create a brand new industry that we are leaders in and actually become producers and not just consumers again. Very easy for a space advocate to believe in it. How do we make the non-space advocates believe in that same vision?
Beautiful question, because that's exactly what I'm actually really trying to do. I know right now I'm somewhat preaching to the choir, and that's fine. But what I really want to do, and I'm trying to push, is becoming a public speaker to non-space listeners. And what we need to do, and here's the problem I have. A lot of space geeks like us really know our subject, but can't communicate it for squat. It's difficult for us to relate what space means to the average everyday person and their daily life. And it's because sometimes some people get too technical. The businessman who works, or the stay-at-home mom, doesn't care how the system works. They just want to know, what's in it for me? How does it help me? And so the best thing that we can possibly do is skip the technicalities of space and explain to them the sheer raw benefits that affect their everyday life. Once people realize that their cell phones are nothing without space, it might sound like, well, duh, but how many people do you think don't think about that? How many people do you think don't put those two dots together and say, wow, if I didn't have this, my business would not nearly be as successful, or I wouldn't be able to communicate with my kids in an emergency or anything like that if it wasn't for space? Or the technology in their car that makes it safer. The tires that they have on their car, that the special rubbers or whatnot that were designed by the space industry, the medical advancements that help prevent, protect, and secure their life so that they can live to be 80, 90, 100 years old. Once people realize, wow, I didn't know the space industry gave us the CAT scan machine, you know, that the original intent was to scan the Apollo skin for radiation testing. And some guy had a whopper of an idea and said, wait a minute, what if we tried this on people and scan them? Voila, CAT scan machine, or advanced diagnostic imaging, or kidney dialysis machines, or water purification systems, or insulated paint for their home. Well, one key thing, if you can show a person how space saves their wallet every day, then they're going to listen to you and they're going to appreciate space a lot more. So you can say, yeah, by the way, you save $35 a month on average in your electric bill because of the technologies that are built into your home as a direct result of the space industry. That makes a difference.
Awesome. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us. Stay with us so we can keep you on for the Epic post-show. If you want to get Douglas's book, you can do that at Amazon.com by going to tinyurl.com/Mallette. And we've got a nifty graphic for that. And Douglas, if they want to get a hold of you, do you have a Twitter account and some other way that they can just interact with you socially?
Absolutely, and I love talking to everybody, so it's great. I'm on Twitter as Douglas Mallette, just one big word, Douglas Mallette. I'm on Facebook, Douglas Mallette in Houston, if you look me up that way. If you're trying to find the book besides a tiny URL, that's good. That's good. If you're on Amazon, if you just type my name, I'm the only one, and so my book pops right up. I guess my name's rather unique. I'm not sure, but it'll pop up by my name too. And so, Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Those are definitely the two best ways to reach me.
Awesome. And by the way, if you're on Amazon and you search for Turning Point, that will not work. You do need to search for his name or use that tiny URL, which will bring you straight to his book. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us all throughout 2009. It was a lot of fun doing the 200 series, and I can't wait for you guys to see what I have in store for the 300 series. It's going to be pretty cool. As always, when you join us live during the post show, we're going to be talking about some of those changes, and we're going to be bouncing some ideas off of you guys because it is frankly a community effort. It's not just Karen and myself. It's everyone that helps build this show. We are nothing without you, and we want to know what you guys have to say. So certainly join us live every Friday at 2 o'clock a.m. Coordinated Universal Time. We're scheduled to come back on the air sometime in early January, Most likely January 8th at 2 a.m. Coordinated Universal Time. That's Thursday, January 7th for those of you in the U.S. However, there is a possibility that we will be changing the time of the show, although very slight. So stay tuned to our Twitter channel for that at twitter.com/spacedvidcast, and we will see you guys in 2010.